So it's day 21 of running the London rail map and I find myself at Lewisham Station. Today we're exploring more of the South Eastern network from Lewisham over to Dartford, from London's longest pier to disused abbeys, and why exactly this line may become a part of the Elizabeth line. It's time to run the North Kent line. The North Kent line on the London rail map lies between Lewisham and Dartford via Woolwich Arsenal, with its services primarily served by South Eastern. The line also sees services operated by Thameslink. Total distance running this line today is over 30 kilometres, visiting a total of 11 stations. And if you're wanting to follow along this route today, then head over to my Strava. The link is available in the description. Since leaving Lewisham Station, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Now, for some of the long-time viewers of the channel, you might be wondering, haven't I ran this section before? And yeah, you're not wrong. See, last year I was running the London tube map, I was running the Thameslink network over from Dartford to Deptford. But this time round, as I'm running the London rail map, it's of course running a brand new operator, South Eastern. We're doing it again, but this time we're doing it in reverse. So this behind me is Blackheath Station, a brilliant Grade 2 listed building that also has 2 disused platforms. It's also named after the park nearby known as Blackheath. Now, if you're a long distance runner, you might be familiar with Blackheath Station. Why is that? Well, it's because it's the closest station to that of the start line of the London Marathon, a marathon that I've entered the ballot numerous times now, and I've still not won it. Yet. It's at this point where the railway line at Blackheath splits, one for the Bexley Heath line, which we're coming back to another time, and the other for the North Kent line. This section between Blackheath and Charlton stations lies a tunnel at a distance of 1.5 kilometres, constructed during the line's development in 1849. The railway then intercepts 2 other railway lines, the Greenwich line and this railway line here, which features one of the few level crossings in London. Now, this freight-only line goes over to what's known as Angersteins Wharf. It's an industrial area for sand, concrete and stone. It's essentially the ingredients of tarmac. Now, as it is one of the very few level crossings in London, and the fact that this line is little used, it's so important to always stop, look and listen for trains, like we've got this freight train right here. We then continue to our next station, Charlton, which thankfully had this water fountain just outside. But what's further along the line is something that's quite an oddity. So I've just come to this level crossing here. It's Charlton Lane Crossing. Now, what's so significant about this? Well, it's one of the very few level crossings along the North Kent line. The rest of them have been blocked off. Now, as we run along more of the North Kent line, you'll see where these former level crossings were, because the only thing that remains are the footbridges. So while we're on the approach to Woolwich Dockyard Station, I have taken a little bit of a detour to show you this right here. This was the former Woolwich Clock House. Now, this dates all the way back to 1783, when all of this area was a dockyard. Now, the majority of this area has been redeveloped for housing, but it is worth noting that, as well as this clock house, there are still some old remnants that exist today. For example, the gatehouse upon entry. It's also one of the main reasons how Woolwich Dockyard Station got its name. Who'd have thought that? Is then a short journey to the next station, Woolwich Arsenal, which is also close to the brand new Woolwich Station on the Elizabeth line. Now, we're running adjacent to Plumstead Road, which will eventually bring us out to Plumstead Station. Now, interestingly, that station had opened 10 years after the line initially opened. Now, Plumstead Station still remains open today, but there was one station just further along that opened much later, but also closed much sooner. Now, this behind me was the former Church Manor halt that opened in 1917 and closed in 1920. Now, why exactly was it that this station was so short-lived? Well, it's because it opened during World War I, and it was to help the workers get to the nearby Royal Arsenal. Now, you can probably tell with the road here on the right-hand side that this was a former level crossing. It used to cross over the North Kent line. Now, all that remains is this footbridge here. It looks like a brand new footbridge that was installed, because this crosses over not just the North Kent line now, but it also crosses the Elizabeth line. Just nearby there is the Plumstead depot for the Elizabeth line, and there's also, just further along, we've got Abbey Wood station, which coincidentally is our next station of the day. Now, you might be familiar with Abbey Wood station being of course one of the terminuses for the Elizabeth line. However, Abbey Wood wasn't always meant to be the terminus for the Elizabeth line. The original terminus of the Elizabeth line in the southeast was meant to be as far as Ebbsfleet and even Gravesend, but due to cost-saving measures, it was instead decided to terminate the line at Abbey Wood. However, there have been recent calls to extend the line beyond Abbey Wood. Some catalysts for the line's extension include the Ebbsfleet Garden City development and the proposed London Paramount Entertainment Resort. Now, at the time of recording, the resort has withdrawn its planning application for a number of reasons. One reason in particular was to rethink their transport strategy. However, the London Resort anticipates submitting their revised application with better transport proposals by the end of 2022, potentially including the funding for extending the Elizabeth line. Numerous consultations into the extension of the Elizabeth line from Abbey Wood have been conducted already. This one here, for example, proposes merging the Elizabeth line with the North Kent line at Abbey Wood, having 8 trains per hour continuing to Northfleet with a further 4 to Gravesend. Other plans also include separating the railway lines between Abbey Wood to Dartford, though this has proved the least cost effective. It's been long anticipated to extend the Elizabeth line to Gravesend. In fact, the route has already been future-proofed. But with all these consultations and feasibility studies, it's almost certain the Elizabeth line will be extended beyond Abbey Wood. But when exactly it'll happen, well, we'll soon find out. I still can't believe that it didn't click until recently that Abbey Wood station was named after the abbey next to the wood. And this abbey here was known as Lesness Abbey. But what captured my attention was this fossil pit here in the heart of the wood. So I'm running through the heart of Abbey Wood, where just beyond the trees here is a fossil pit. Now, some of the things that have been found in this fossil pit date all the way back to 55 million years ago. Some of the things found in there include things like shark's teeth, crocodile teeth, fish fins, so many things date back 55 million years ago. Now, that site is what's known as a scientific point of interest due to the number of artifacts that have been found here. Now, how is that's even possible? I mean, this is all woodland, right? Well, it's because all of this area was in the sea. In particular, it was known as the Blackheath Sea. It's then time to say goodbye to Abbey Wood as we continue on our journey. We then intercept the long distance walk known as the Green Chain Walk until we arrive at the next station, Belvedere, where, yep, there's yet another old level crossing. But what's also nearby is Nordenfelt Gardens, which was the location of an old railway line for the nearby factories, but more on that in a moment. We then arrive at Erith Station, where there's quite a lot to unpack. So this right here is Erith Station. This station building dates all the way back to 1849, when the North Kent line was first constructed. Now, what I find fascinating around Erith Station is that it has seen so many developments. For example, there used to be a road directly in front of the station that just carried on, but now it's been blocked off, and there's now a dual carriageway here. Just around the corner from Erith Station, there's of course the college that's here. That used to be the location of a tram depot. But what I found even more fascinating that still exists today is London's longest pier. What's that all about? And this right here is London's longest pier with a total length of 360 metres. Now, you might notice about this pier in particular is that it curves around and then it heads out towards the River Thames, and it's because for this area here, when you had the boats that were coming in with their goods, it was so that this was a protected area for them so that they weren't affected by storms or anything on the other side. Now, of course, this was an industrial pier, so you can still see at the end of the pier where you've got the old railway buffers. You can also see where there used to be the old cranes here as well. But this pier, I will say, is not the most glamorous of piers. It's not like your Brighton piers or your Southend piers by any standards, but I do think it's still remarkable for the fact that this is London's longest pier. So you see just behind me here, you see some trees just between all of the buildings around. That was known as Railway Gardens, and it's because in its place used to be some old flour mills. There was also the old railway station wharf, and in fact this pier in particular, London's longest pier of course, this was known as Railway Pier. In fact this whole area was known as Railway Wharf. All the railways. I then pass through this housing estate until I get to the next station, Slade Green. But before this station existed, this was known as Whitehall Crossing. So made it to Slade Green Station, got one more station left on the North Kent line on the London rail map for today. Now Slade Green was originally known as Slade's Green Station when it opened in 1900, but also in the vicinity you have the South Eastern train depot, and what was also meant to open in the area was the Harbury Park Freight Terminal. However, that might not be happening. Harbury Park was a proposed rail freight interchange that would have linked freight connections via rail and road. The planning application was submitted by developers Vauxhall Developments Limited. However, planning permission was denied. The interchange was due to be constructed on a piece of London's Green Belt, a protected green space that prohibits urban developments, which laid the foundation of refusing the application. It's also unknown what impacts it may have had on rail capacity in the area, particularly with the proposed extension of the Elizabeth line. An appeal was lodged, however, in May 2019 it was refused by the Secretary of State. Anyway, it was at this point where I run through Crayford Marshes and eventually cross over Dartford Junction. Then, just under 30 kilometres later, we made it to Dartford, the last station of the day. So far running the South Eastern network, we've ran the Hayes line and the North Kent line, a total distance of 57.58 kilometres. Join me next time as we run more of the South Eastern network on the London rail map in another episode of Underground. See you next time.